This is a presentation from the 2013 Cannabis World Summit. Please visit www.cannabisworldsummit.com for more great cannabis information, which is available to you completely for free. This information is being made available to you in part thanks to our sponsors. Please visit their websites to learn more about their excellent products and services. The following presentation is for informational purposes only. The opinions expressed are those of the participants and do not necessarily reflect those of Leaves of Hope Productions, Inc. Please note that regardless of any statements expressed or implied in the following presentation, that we do not condone you breaking any laws. We are not providing any legal, medical, or financial advice of any kind. No comments about cannabis being a cure for any medical use, expressed or implied, is to be taken as a claim or guarantee. None of the statements have been verified by the FDA of the United States, Health Canada, or the governing organizations of your particular country. And again, this information is being provided for informational purposes only, and the participants exercise their freedom of speech discussing what they believe to be true. We do not guarantee the accuracy of any information provided. It is your responsibility to evaluate the information before you choose to make any use of it. Please consult with a doctor knowledgeable about cannabis prior to using cannabis, and or prior to discontinuing any medications you may be currently using. Please check with the laws of your country and region to determine whether you are legally permitted to use and or grow cannabis prior to any involvement with cannabis yourself. Even though we believe that cannabis ought to be legalized, we do not condone you violating any laws. Please review the legal disclaimers on the Cannabis World Summit website and only proceed to enjoy this presentation if you agree with all legal disclaimers, agree to hold the company, Leaves of Hope Productions, Inc., and the presenters harmless and are of legal age in your region. Thanks to Kevin MacLeod and Incompetech.com for the music used in this introduction. Hi, this is Bobby from the Cannabis World Summit, and I'd like to introduce to you our very next speaker, which is ElectroPig Von Fokkengruuven. Unfortunately, the introduction or the beginning portion of our call had somehow been deleted. Unfortunately, a couple of callers that I've interviewed, I was unaware at the time that the call recording service that I'd been paying a lot of money for each month to have a reliable service was unfortunately not functioning properly, and they did not notify their customer base, such as myself, to let us know that they were having some technical difficulties. Of course, the worst portion of the calls that were lost was with Rick Simpson. I was aware that I had lost something with ElectroPig, or at least I believed I did. And then when I was editing the videos or these audios prior to releasing it for the summit, to my horror, I discovered it was actually the beginning portion of the call with ElectroPig that had gotten lost. Now, fortunately, most of the call is intact. Most of the call, all the way to the very end, is there. However, just the introduction where ElectroPig talks about himself and how he got started in cannabis and how he, of course, got into all his activism. He's a fabulous activist, I might add. And I'm very impressed with this man, and this is the reason why I invited him to be a part of the summit. Unfortunately, the introduction or the beginning portion of the call has been lost, and so we do not have that. And unfortunately, also, I discovered that it was the beginning portion of this call that was lost just before the summit as I was editing these audios down, and so I did not have the time in order to do a redo or a retake of the calls. So please understand that in a few moments we're going to start the interview, and it will just abruptly start at some point already into the conversation. So just carry on from that point on. I hope that you'll be able to listen and figure out what we're discussing. There's a lot of great points that ElectroPig brings up, and of course, please realize he travels around the country, around Canada and even the United States, going to various different summits and various different conferences, 420 events, and he talks to a lot of really interesting people. You can find him online on Facebook. He's got his website, which will be shared as well during the audio. And you can also find him on Twitter as ElectroPig. And just for what it's worth, when I found this man, he intrigued me by one particular concept, and I just contacted him because I just wanted to know more about his concept of overgrow, where he was suggesting that perhaps the best activist activity that people can do is one that would be the most visible, and that's, of course, sowing hemp seeds to, of course, raise awareness to the cannabis issue. Now, he'll talk more about that during the interview portion, but we're not, of course, condoning people to be breaking the laws. This is perhaps something that is applicable to some people in some jurisdictions, in some areas, some countries, but we'll talk about that more later on. But after speaking with him about that, it became clear to me that this man is highly intelligent. He's a fabulous activist, and he has a lot of really great concepts about other things as well, in particular. So I invited him to talk about, of course, sowing the hemp seeds, but also about what he talks about legalize, deschedule. Rather than legalizing, he's promoting different linguistics or lingos or terminology, which is better towards our objectives, and he'll explain why. But also, he talks a lot about how the different factions of the cannabis movements, rather than fighting and bickering amongst ourselves, we should actually be working collectively in harmony with each other. And of course, there's other things throughout this call that he shares. For example, the pot copper coin, how this is a fantastic conversational starter and a way to introduce people to cannabis. He'll talk about that during the call. And there are so many other tidbits of information that he shares. I really, really regret that we lost the introduction or the very beginning of this call. And I love ElectroPig so much. I'm hoping that he will, again, do another interview with me for next year's Cannabis World Summit, because I really enjoyed talking with this man. He's a very colorful character, as you'll hear from what he says. He's extremely intelligent, but he also has this interesting personality that I guess he uses it for the dramatic effect. Initially, when I first contacted him, I wasn't quite sure what I was getting myself into speaking with him, but I'm absolutely delighted that I've connected with him. He's absolutely a fantastic person to listen to, lots of great ideas, and if you get a chance to connect with him through one of the social media sites, definitely please do so. And I hope, of course, he doesn't get overwhelmed by all the people wanting to reach out to him. But with no further ado, let us speak with ElectroPig Von Fokkengruuven.
I'm not sure what happened there, but you were talking about that lawyer guy, and so.
Yeah, I think I kept talking until I heard a beep, and I went, "Hey, wait a minute." The joys of modern technology.
Okay, so basically you started talking, so why don't we just sort of back up a little bit in the conversation where you just started talking about this guy that you heard on the radio or whatever, or you actually asked some lawyer guy about the concept of deshed. Pick it up from there again, and I'll just sort of find a way to clean it up and splice it seamlessly, so to speak.
Okay. While I was talking to the lawyer, he basically confirmed my suspicions about the government using rescheduling to eliminate or to put a blanket ban for cannabis use for everyone, and that wouldn't just be for the casual potheads who they have no respect for, or the hemp farmers that they're trying to keep down because they want to, take over their farms and make it into more corporate growing. But I just completely lost my train of thought for some. I'm sorry. I just looked out the window and I'm thinking, oh great, more snow. Okay. We can chop this little piece out.
Okay, you know what? Let's start again. Back to the start of the call, or the start of this second call, or whatever. You know what I'm saying. Take two.
Okay. The problem with the word rescheduling is that in order to move cannabis from a higher level, or which is, it is the highest level, it's Schedule 1, in order to move it to a Schedule 2 or Schedule 3, the government will be able to say, well, we have to do our due diligence safety studies. So until we complete these due diligence scientific studies to verify that this plant is safer, or is safe enough to be rescheduled, we're going to institute a blanket ban for everyone. And that would include necessarily medicinal users, because they have a license for a Schedule 1 substance. Well, it won't be a Schedule 1 substance. It'll be a Schedule 2 or Schedule 3.
Mm-hmm.
So they could theoretically, and given the history of what government does, they probably would ban cannabis for everyone for any use, with the use of their rescheduling plans. Now, if it was descheduled, there would be no reason to do any of that. It would be out of the schedule. Boom.
So technically speaking, when we're talking about legalizing weed, marijuana, cannabis, hemp, or whatever terminology we want to use, when we say let's legalize it, would the simplest, most effective solution just simply be descheduling it or rescheduling it at least to a lower category?
Well, the only way that we're going to see freedom is if it's removed from the schedule. So rescheduling it doesn't do anything. It just makes it it just moves it into a different legal control scheme. It doesn't remove it from third party, from third party control, where someone else can tell you, well, you can't grow that plant because there's something wrong with it. Let's not worry about the fact that there's absolutely no reason that there's anything.
And in fact,
wrong
they've had
with
those studies that kept on coming back saying, yeah, there's it should be legal or it should be free because there's nothing wrong with it. The studies that you were alluding to them having to do to justify their scheduling it.
Like the one that Richard Nixon did. It came back and says, there's no reason that this plant should be illegal. So he just said, well, we'll just ignore that. Yeah, we won't pay attention to that.
And of course, it's interesting. People should be aware of the how marijuana damages your brain cells with those monkeys inhaling. What was it? Something like thousands of joints in the span of 5 minutes. They weren't getting brain damage from marijuana. They were actually getting asphyxiated from smoke inhalation for 5 minutes. They were getting brain damage because there was a lack of brains for all those minutes. But anyways, that's a whole other subject matter. But just putting that bit of trivia out there so that people listening.
And for anybody who wants to look into that, that's the Heath Tulane study. HEATHTULANE. Look into that, find the methodology, and you'll find out that they basically choke these things to death.
And, of course, the conclusion that's drawn upon from that study is that marijuana damages your brain. Ooh. And how many of us have actually believed that propaganda for generations now?
I don't think anyone ever believed it if they had actually smoked it.
True, but nonetheless, I'm sure most of us can relate to the fact that when we were students in school, perhaps before the time we've even ever touched marijuana for the first time, we were educated that it's horrible. It would damage our brains, it would damage our lives, and we bought into that belief system. It was after, of course, having a few puffs that those belief systems are shifted. And I think that's unfortunate that we lie to our children. But anyways, that's a whole other subject. But nonetheless, something that's worth looking into because, of course, a lot of our laws are justified on these illusions and falsehoods. We've been blatantly lied to, and I think that people...
But they have been very, very consistent, though, and they should get credit for that.
Well... Sure. I don't know if I want to give them credit for They should get credit, like jail time credits or something, but anyhow.
I think that would be a fair exchange, yes.
Yes. But anyhow, people need to be aware that we've been blatantly lied to, and a lot of the things that we've grown up believing about cannabis are flat-out lies. And, of course, times are changing. I think people are beginning to finally awaken to these facts, to these truths. And
well, anyhow, a good example of that was the 2002 Canadian Senate report. I would recommend anyone Google 2002 Canadian Senate report, and they will find that they had decided based on the preponderance of scientific and medical evidence that there was no need to continue cannabis prohibition. But very shortly after, the Prime Minister got on TV and he said that they were planning on decriminalizing cannabis in Canada. This is in 2002. Mm-hmm. Within 24 hours, they had received word from the United States government that the border would be shut down and trade sanctions would be instituted if the Canadian government did what was right for the Canadian people. Very shortly after, there was no more talk about it. It completely disappeared from the Canadian media.
And there's a lot that could be said about that. And of course, now with Colorado and Washington, who've essentially legalized in the state, those arguments for Canada have evaporated. However, it's not just about Canada; it's about the rest of the world. Because let's face it, the United States does actually have a boot on the throat of most countries in terms of maintaining the prohibition. But now, with
another
the
interesting thing that many people don't seem to understand is this was actually done in order to protect U.S. patent rights, because in 2003, the United States government granted themselves a patent on cannabis for use as antioxidants and neuroprotectants. Let me see. U.S. patent 6630507, I believe, if I remember correctly. I think that's about right. So the year before, they threatened to essentially open the floodgates to a war with Canada over cannabis, and the next year they had a multiple medical use patent on the plant that they say has to be illegal because it has no medical uses after granting themselves a multiple medical use patent on it. Something doesn't quite add up.
I have to say, just on a personal level, it's somewhat humorous, if it wasn't so sad, that argument still stands, where they're still fighting to have it deschedulized in the States because of the fact that there's no medical use, and yet there's an outstanding amount of evidence, both medical, scientific, and anecdotal, that there is outstanding medical value to this plant here. But
and they love to say that it's only anecdotal evidence, despite the fact that all science originated from anecdotal evidence, after which they devised experiments to prove or to understand what that anecdotal evidence really meant. So they're completely going against scientific facts. They're completely going against logical reasoning because they need to continue to control the people. Now, why do they need to continue to control the people? Obviously, we're not smart enough to make up our own minds. We're not smart enough to fight back when we know something is wrong. Mm-hmm. So they get to keep making money off us. As far as they're concerned, that's probably all it's really about. It's the confiscation of funds from the people and telling the people that we are taking your money, we are taking your rights in order to protect you. And it doesn't really protect anybody except themselves.
Mm-hmm. Bottom line is, it can be said, and you were explaining to me before how it's really all just financial reasons that these prohibitions are in existence in the first place.
Oh yeah, there's a reason why they keep picking up people on the street with a quarter of a gram. You have a roach in your ashtray, and they get to take your car. Well, that makes perfect sense. That little joint in your ashtray is worth maybe 2 cents. They get to take your new Mustang because you had that roach in the ashtray. Well, what's the difference? They find something of yours that they can then use to justify to take your car. Well, if you just got a new Mustang, you're looking at $60,000. They can sell that. They can use it themselves. If they sell it, they can sell it at a discount. Somebody else, maybe their friends or their family, they can get their nice discount on a brand new car. Might smell a little smoky. Not really that big a deal. If you save, you get yourself a $60,000 car for $40,000, that's a good deal.
Good deal. Absolutely.
And
reminds me of the bumper sticker I saw some time ago that says, "Don't steal. The government hates competition."
Yep, that was on Ron Paul's desk for many, many years.
Well, I'd like to ask you about these groups that you were talking about before as well. There's, of course, there's a lot of us who are talking about legalization or descheduling and repealing the prohibition, but of course now there's the groups of the hemp farmers, there's the groups of the medicinal users, the recreational users, as well as the religious and civil liberties groups. Can you talk about that? Why rather than collectively working together towards a common objective, we're actually fighting amongst ourselves and, in a sense, hurting ourselves with what we're attempting to do in the first place? Can you...
That's actually the biggest problem. That was the reason why I started the website in the first place, is because I see a million different little groups all trying to do what everybody wants, but they only want what everybody wants for themselves. They don't want it. They don't want freedom except for themselves. They want everyone else to bend to their needs. Now, in the case of the medical users, that is arguably the most important, it's the most pressing issue. If you can save somebody's life, well, duh, that kind of takes precedence. But you also have to look at it from the fact that, we'll just say the casual or recreational smoker, the weekend toker, whatever you want to call them, well, they could still, there's no reason that they shouldn't, have a toke on the weekend if that's what they want to do. If they're sitting around the TV, watching a video.
Meanwhile, others are drinking a glass of wine or a shot of vodka or something.
There's no justification to break down into all these little groups. Then you get the hemp farmers. Well, the hemp farmers, they're upset because they want to grow specific strains that they have been told are only good for industrial uses or food uses or fuel uses or whatever else, as a basis for plastics or, whatever reason that they have to grow these specific strains. So they don't want their hemp fields contaminated with medicinally beneficial plants.
Now, can I just interject for just a moment here, because a lot of people have a misconception about this. I know the answer, but I'm going to ask you this as a question. Hemp, marijuana, what's the difference? None.
The only difference is in the THC level. Some have been bred up, some have been bred down.
So it's exactly the same
Cannabis
plant.
is cannabis is cannabis is cannabis. It really, when you get right down to it, it's a specific genus of plants or a specific family of plants, and there are thousands of different types, but they all have similar benefits. They all have the same basic chemical rented lips. They all have the same basic chemical compounds within them in varying amounts. So I think Jack Herer did some research on it and found that even with industrial hemp, it would be a more vigorous, more robust plant if it had about 3% THC. And it's been bred down in the hemp market down to 0.3% or something like that. And there's not really any benefit to that, because apparently the THC also provides protection from the sun for the plant. So if it has more THC, it'll be more resistant to sun damage. Sort of makes sense.
But the bottom line is
a little bit more.
But the bottom line is, of course, all this discussion, it's in a sense nonsense that people are differentiating between hemp and marijuana, and the hemp farmers are, resistant to having marijuana growing in their fields, which is really all the same plant. And the reason why I just wanted to clarify this point is because so many people have the misconception that they think hemp is an entirely different plant, maybe related or a cousin of marijuana or something like that.
Well, another good example of that is use of the term hemp oil. Now, some people have been very, very upset with Rick Simpson because he used the term hemp oil. Well, if you go back a couple hundred years, they just called it Indian hemp, and what we would call cannabis indica today, they called Indian hemp. Well, that Indian hemp or cannabis indica was the same things that were growing out in the fields. So hemp oil makes perfect sense if it's extracted from the actual plant. The biggest problem I see is that more and more health food companies are marketing hemp seed oil with the label of hemp oil. That needs to be addressed, because if it's not made from the plant, it won't have all of the active cannabinoids that you would expect from the use of the term hemp oil. If it's made from the seeds, it has almost no THC content at all. Mm-hmm. It's hemp seed oil made from the seed, pressed from.
And it's very nutritious, by the way.
Pressed. Yeah, but it doesn't have the same medicinal possibilities or medicinal potential that the oil from the plant does. So that's the bigger issue. We have to educate more people to understand the difference between hemp seed oil and hemp oil. Now, it's also been suggested that we use the term cannabis oil, and I agree with that, and I've talked to Rick about it, and he also agrees that cannabis oil is also a more accurate term. Mm-hmm. It's equivalent to using the term hemp oil, but it's the same problem. If it's called cannabis oil, then the health food companies will change to marketing it as cannabis oil or cannabis seed oil. Then there'll be somebody that will say, oh, well, geez, we'll get more money if we call it cannabis oil instead of cannabis seed oil. So
it's ironic that we're talking about
fix that.
It's ironic that we're talking about the divide and conquer groups, and it seems that even amongst hemp, we're now having even smaller subdivisions there just because of the oil in itself. The nomenclature.
People don't seem to understand that when they all say that they want the same thing, they all want the freedom to grow a plant if they want to grow a plant. They want the freedom to do what they want, so long as they don't hurt anyone else. But they only want that freedom for themselves. So if you've got 100 different subgroups and one subgroup wins, they proclaim from the highest mountaintop, we won, ha 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 ha. They don't care that the other 99% lost.
Mm-hmm. Like you were mentioning before, of course, it's important that the medicinal users have access to it, just from a human rights or human compassion perspective. But you're also talking how it's also important for the recreational user to have access as well, because it's ultimately the same battle. It's ultimately the same freedoms that we're dealing with.
Well, the basic thing that I had in my mind was let people grow whatever they want to grow. If they want to sell it, let them sell it. If they want to start a business, let them start a business. Because as soon as they start a business, they will be generating revenue. Well, that can be taxed. So the government has absolutely no reason to spend, in Canada, about $2 billion a year, in the States about $20 billion. That's probably low estimates on both sides of the border. Mm-hmm. But if they simply eliminated wasting money that doesn't need to be wasted, all of these existing businesses could come out from underground or from the underground economy and start actually generating legitimate revenue, which could then be taxed. Each one of those business needs employees. Employees earn an income.
And we're just talking straight sales tax and income taxes, not like additional taxes due to it being marijuana taxes.
Absolutely. There is absolutely zero justification or need for cannabis-specific taxes of any kind. If they really wanted to generate revenue, what they would do is they would stop wasting billions of dollars and just let the market decide for itself. Let the market exist. Let the market contribute to society. But that's kind of too easy a solution. Another good example of idiotic taxation would be the Canadian tobacco market. In the 90s, the Canadian government couldn't figure out why they weren't making as much money as they thought they should be making, so they started a few studies, and they found that 85% of Canadian tobacco products were exported to the United States, and then they were smuggled back in order to avoid the excessive taxation. So they decided, I can't remember what year it was.
I remember that.
They decided, okay, well, we're going to drop the taxes. So instead of being $7 a pack, it went down to about $2. All of a sudden, no one had a problem going to the store. You know, they're saving $5 a pack all of a sudden. They thought it was a great deal. They were still paying taxes, but it wasn't oppressive taxation. But overnight, the entire U.S.-Canadian tobacco smuggling operation all across the border disappeared. It dried up. It was gone. The problem was solved, but that wasn't good enough. They couldn't actually solve a problem that actually benefited the people. They had to find a way to start taxing it again. And now it's up to about $10 a pack now. And it's all taxes. But the difference is there's still a smuggling operation, but now it's from India and China. It used to be Canadian products being exported and then imported back in to avoid the taxation, but now it's large-scale smuggling operations from foreign countries with foreign tobacco products, which we have absolutely no control over. So they accidentally fixed a problem, and then they had to make sure that they recreated the problem on a much, much larger scale. So it's the same basic idea. You can't keep doing the wrong thing over and over and over again.
And it looks like they want to essentially replicate the problem with cannabis, marijuana. Once it eventually becomes legalized, they just want to.
If they can find a way to charge 500 different taxes on 500 different things, even though it's one plant, they'll do it. If they can make anything more complex, more costly, they will do it, because that's
mandate of the government, I suppose.
Yeah, that's their job.
Yeah.
Very, very.
But back to the people. So just of course, just before we move on to the next step, I want to talk about something that people can actually do. But of course, there's also the religious, spiritual groups, as well as the civil liberty groups. And perhaps can you just sort of tie it together where how can we all unify rather than bickering amongst ourselves? How can we? Do you have any suggestions as to how we can see the common goal, see the common light, and drop our differences and unify? Because together we are stronger. You know, separation. That's how we're divided and conquered, right?
Yes. Well, that's the thing that I have not been able to come to a solution for that. I mean, common sense tells you that if anyone can grow a plant, then everyone can grow a plant. Everyone can decide what specific strain that they need. Now, the idea that I had, well, for in the hemp field, for example, it would make actually a lot more sense if everyone stopped fighting and realized that it was just the same plant. A hemp farmer could grow any strain that they wanted. If they wanted to grow something for fiber, they would pick a nice, tall sativa strain. Mm-hmm. And there would be no longer any reason that they couldn't grow a medicinally viable strain. So all of a sudden, they would have the market for seeds. That could be into the food market, into the fuel market, or into the medical market because of the specific medicinal values of the strain. Plus, they would be able to sell the stalks or the stems and the herds for industrial use or for textiles or whatever else.
As a farmer, that just makes economic sense to actually maximize your crop by having the most available markets that you can sell to. You're growing one crop, you're growing the exact same thing, but if you can actually sell the fiber, the fuel, the seeds, and the medicine.
Yep. And yeah, that's right too. I forgot about that. They could sell the bud to people who don't want the strongest possible weed because, you don't want the Sensimelia because, it's too strong for your particular constitution. Well, fine. You would be able to just go and pick that up as well. So that would effectively be 3 separate markets for every crop. Now, what farmer in their right mind wouldn't want access to 3 markets with one crop? They could effectively triple their income with that, and on top of that, their next crop rotation, it's going to have less chemicals in the soil, so it's going to be safer food. You'd have to be an absolute moron not to understand the benefits of putting this into your rotation.
Yeah, well, it just makes sense, especially when you put it like that. But I guess that's part of the process is that we need to educate people because it seems that people see one facet, but, they don't see the whole jewel for what it is.
They see the facet that directly impacts them. They don't understand that if everyone was fully educated on all aspects of the situation, that all of a sudden they would realize that fighting for their specific little corner of the situation, it's not going to help everyone. But if they fight all together for the same thing, which they think they're doing, they really believe that they're fighting for everyone at this point, but they're actually not. Oh boy. No, it's very frustrating because you can't. It's almost impossible to get people to understand it. I've even talked to at least one medical user who absolutely hates hemp farmers because they'll destroy his medicinal plants, even though it's never happened before.
Because of the pollen?
Yeah, even though it's never happened, he knows that's going to happen, and he absolutely hates recreational users, even or nothing but a recreational user, and he was, another dirty criminal. But now he has a piece of paper, so now he hates the people that did the exact same thing that he did. Mm-hmm. And he would love to see people go to jail because they didn't give up their rights and sign these license forms. So it's insane.
It's absolutely insane. But you touched upon a little bit earlier about the education, educating people's minds is part of the solution. And I guess that's part of what you were doing with your website. That's what I'm technically doing with the Cannabis World Summit as well. And, of course, there's many other people who are doing their own contributions to the cause by attempting to educate. So you said before you don't really have a solution, but would perhaps education or raising awareness in people's minds that we're helping the people realize that the arguments that they have in their minds were perhaps invalid, or helping them to see the light, is that perhaps one of the solutions that we need at this time, to raise the awareness and educate people about these facts and these truths so that they can actually see that the right thing is simply legalize, deschedule, however you prefer to word that?
Well, that's the biggest problem right now. Everyone knows their own specific, whatever is directly attached to their specific situation, and they don't really care about the bigger picture. So, I had talked to a few people, and they said, well, somebody has to get out there and just tell these people. And, they made the suggestion that I try to do a tour of all the different events and try to piece all this together and explain the bigger picture to people. And basically, I actually came up with, I drastically extended the concept where you would actually be able to take all this information on the road and give them all available information so they would understand how the rest of the market works. They would understand how these, the stuff that they throw away could be used for fuel or could be used for food or this, that, or the other thing. But, once I developed the plan, no one actually supported. Not even the people who basically gave me the initial idea and tried to convince me for, the better part of a few years to go ahead and try to do it. So it's like people want things done, and they will support you if you do it, but you have to do it without any support before they'll support you.
A convoluted catch-22.
Yes, they're 100% behind everything you're trying to do, but they just don't believe you're going to do it, so they're not going to support you until you show that you're going to do what you can't do without support, and then they will support you.
It's almost like one of those convoluted, I know what you know that I know that, and then you're just like mentally trying to follow the logic of this. Yeah, exactly.
And this is the kind of, I call it anti-logic that people are using.
Mm-hmm.
They want their freedom, but they want somebody else to give it to them. They love the Constitution because the Constitution, which was created by men, gave them their rights. They don't understand the idea that they had rights before this piece of paper was drafted by people. So if the piece of paper was drafted by people, it couldn't possibly give them anything because they already had it. It merely enshrines their rights, blah, 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 blah. They don't want to think about the bigger picture. They think a piece of paper gave them something.
Right.
If they looked at anything in any amount of detail, they would understand that they've been lied to about basically everything.
Yeah, I get into that because we could talk for hours.
Huge.
Cannabis is just a tiny drop in a humongous barrel of these types of topics. But anyhow, we're talking a little bit about, of course, solutions, raising awareness, education. But there was another interesting idea that you've been proposing as well. Now, I do have some words that I have to say after you explain this concept. But can you talk about Overgrow and why you think that might be the visible solution, might be the best solution? You understand what I'm referring to. Perhaps can you just talk about that a bit?
Oh, that would be the global public plantings idea. Well, basically, what that came from was I kept seeing these little stories here and there about a plant popping up here and a plant popping up there. And I laughed my ass off when I heard about, I saw a picture of a 6-foot-tall plant growing in a hanging basket somewhere in Texas. I have no idea where it was at this time. And I had heard about the seed balloon phenomenon, where people just get a bunch of seeds and tape them onto a helium balloon, and wherever they go, they go. But that wasn't targeted. There's no way that you can say it's not going to end up on the top of a mountaintop and
or in the ocean,
stuck in a glacier, or in the middle of the lake, or if it lands out in the forest somewhere. Well, what good did that do? So I just sort of started thinking about, well, what would happen if there was a more targeted planting, like on the courthouse steps, or beside the local police station, or in the garden at City Hall, or in the mayor's garden,
Or throughout public places and neighborhoods or wherever, right?
Yeah, exactly. Well, not necessarily neighborhoods, because you don't want to.
Right.
You want to use it for a political advantage. You want to get people talking, and hopefully, someone with a certain amount of knowledge will overhear one of these conversations and say, "Well, no, you're wrong about that. It's not a dangerous plant. No, the plant isn't going to chase your children down the street and stick heroin needles in their arm. No, that's not true. There's no such thing as a gateway drug." We could actually, basically, most people in the cannabis movement that consider themselves activists because they smoked a joint on the courthouse steps one day a year, they think that that's all they need to do. But they're afraid to broach the subject with anyone that they don't think is cool or who doesn't already know what we already know. So we're not increasing the number of informed people. So it's not really that much of a surprise that nothing is really changing. If it's the same people who are talking amongst themselves, it's not really helping to spread any information. So if there was plants popping up in every major city and, every small town, every tiny little village, and if this was reported in the news, all of a sudden, people would be talking about it. Well, most people don't know what we know. But if they were talking about it, all of a sudden, someone, that would be us, could impart some of this information that we have learned over the last 20, 30, 40, 50 years that these people don't know. We could correct the misperceptions. We could correct the misinformation, the disinformation, the outright lies, the fraud. And all of a sudden, we would see the number of informed people going up instead of, maintaining a flat line. Then we might be able to see something change in a real hurry. There's something, it doesn't matter if 1 million people around the world know something. If the other 6.9 billion people don't know it, they are the majority. That's what's going to, it's sort of like the idea of democracy is that anytime over 50% of people agree on something, they win. So in a world where there are 51% idiots and 49% scientists and engineers, the idiots are going to win, and that's supposed to be a good thing. So in the same vein, if we have more informed people, okay, they will win. But the way it is today, we have a considerably larger number of uninformed people who are making decisions based on their ignorance. And that's not working out too well.
Well, fortunately, more and more people are beginning to be educated about this because of everything that is going on. I firmly
believe we still have to do more to speed the process. We have to get more people to use that shoulder box, for something more than fat storage.
So how is the Overgrow concept contribute to this, and what can people do now? Of course, I also have a couple of legal words that I want to mention as well. But just talk about the concept. How is this something that people can do towards as an activity that they can do towards raising the awareness that you're speaking of?
Well, as far as that's concerned, all you have to do is just figure out the places in your own hometown where you could plant a few seeds that would potentially generate some public discussion. I wouldn't recommend growing plants in your front yard to make a political statement, because all of a sudden, you know that it's an incredibly dangerous plant, and it will kill you if you smoke it or if you look at it for more than 13 seconds.
It's better to grow castor beans.
It's scientifically proven. So you don't want to, just, plow up the front lawn and plant a bunch of seeds there. But what you do want is the idea of, if there's a planter in front of the courthouse and, you're probably going to go there for a parking ticket or whatever else anyways, well, just push a little seed in there. Well, if it grows long enough, and if somebody catches a picture of it and sends it to the media, well, then they can talk about the dreaded scourge of the marijuana outbreak, and they can have the media can have their stupid stories, and they can spread their propaganda, they can lie to people, but you will hear about it, and you will be able to tell people the truth.
Any publicity is good publicity, too, in that sense.
Well, any
in the sense that it raises
a conversation.
Yes,
yeah,
exactly. Now, of course, seeds. Going to the seed banks for seeds now, on average, more or less, it comes out to about $10 a seed. Is that the best way to acquire the seeds for this activism purpose, or is there another way to go about doing that?
I would say it would be absolutely ridiculous to spend that much money on seeds, because if your idea behind it is the same as mine, and you just want some political discussion to be opened, you also know that the places where you're going to need to drop these seeds, they're going to be cut as soon as they're detected, because excuse me. Okay.
Quite all right.
Sorry. If the seeds are if the plants are not going to be allowed to reach maturity, then you should use the cheapest possible seed you can. If you can find hemp seed that hasn't been irradiated or chemically treated or heat treated, that's the stuff that you should be using in public plantings. You should not be using, well, we'll just call them good seeds or medicinally beneficial seeds or whatever, however you want to look at them.
Oh, for the cost of one or two seeds for this political statement, you can get a bag of 1,000.
Probably.
Yeah,
it wouldn't be out of the realm of possibility that you would get thousands of times more for the same amount of money.
Now, we don't want to mention any specific websites, folks, but if you were looking for seeds, there's plenty of places online, particularly from Europe, that you can actually get viable hemp seed. They're used as food sources. They can be used as bird treats, but there are places online that you can get these types of seeds. Now,
in Europe, they actually use hemp seed as fish bait.
Really?
So that's another thing to look for. Well, basically what they do is they start germinating it, and once it grows that little tail, it looks like a tadpole. So they put that on a hook, and boom, they get all sorts of hits. So that's another potential source from it.
Well, you know what? I just learned something. Thank you very much.
Well, I didn't know that until a couple of years ago either. So
I was about to say in the spring I was going to go fishing, but I still don't think sprouting hemp seeds is a good thing to do from a legal perspective for fishing. So I'll save that for.
Well, not yet in North America, no.
Yeah, in a few years once there's no legal issues to go fishing with hemp. But anyhow, that's an interesting idea to explore someday.
But the other thing that I wanted to mention is if you've got a ton of hemp seeds, don't just throw them, everywhere, because there are medical growers out there that they may not have proper filtration set up, and they'll be all upset that that garbage hemp is growing out, near their grow op. That's another term that really makes me sick. I'm really annoyed with grow-op. You don't hear about tomato grow-ops or strawberry grow-ops. The only time you've heard of that is with cannabis, and it's just another artificial term to make it sound like there's something different. Just call it a greenhouse, call it a garden. That's what it is.
Right.
It's not a grow-op. When you hear about all this stuff about there was a detection of a sophisticated grow-op. Well, somebody might have just been growing 3 plants under a light.
Mm-hmm. But it completely trashes the property value once it's been found out that they've had plants growing there, and of course, when they have huge grow-ops in homes, and of course induces mold, and they have to destroy the electricals and they can destroy the house, of course, when you have
Now, wouldn't it be better if it was free for people to do what they want, and they could just put a couple of plants out in the backyard?
Absolutely.
There would be none of the mold problem. There would be none of the hydro problem. There would be none of the damage to rental property. There would just be a couple of plants growing out back by the garage. No big deal.
Just for clarity's sake, because some people might not be educated about this, the reason why it would be a problem with mold is if you have 50 or 60 or 100 plants growing in your home or house that you rent or purchase for the purpose of a grow-op, because that's a lot of plants putting up a lot of moisture into the air, and of course that invites mold growing.
and
However,
it has nothing to do with cannabis whatsoever.
If you have 100 tomato plants... Yeah, it's moisture. If you have 100 tomato plants growing in your basement, you're going to have the exact same problem. So it's not a cannabis-specific problem.
So what they should do is they should outlaw moisture. They should call it by its scientific name. They should say, all right, today we have to eliminate the problem of dihydrogen monoxide poisoning. Doesn't that sound worse?
Yes, I remember seeing that actually.
We should do that. We should eliminate dihydrogen. Did you know that people could drown in as little as 1 liter of dihydrogen monoxide? We have to outlaw it.
That was on that show. What was it called? That bullshit by what's his name? And what's that? They're magicians and comedians. I can't remember the name off.
Probably Penn and Teller. I wouldn't be surprised.
Yes, actually, that's exactly who I was thinking of. I just couldn't think of their names off the top of my head. But
bullshit. That was the name of the show.
Yes.
I got that premature senility thing too. Don't worry about it. It's okay because eventually you grow into it.
Well, speaking of growing into it, I just wanted to say, from a legal perspective, folks, of course, we're talking about the idea of using hemp seeds, not any particularly expensive marijuana, cannabis, medicinal strains or anything like that.
Keep the good seeds for yourself or give them to someone who has a medical need for them. Don't use good seeds in the mayor's hedgerow. It's going to be cut down. Don't waste good genetics on a political thing. Find the crap. The crap seed, the brick seed that you get from Mexico or wherever it comes from. Use stuff that you don't really know that it's worth it. Don't spend good money on good seeds when you know it's going to be cut down the second it's spotted.
But it's also important to mention here, of course, folks, this is a Cannabis World Summit. So we're talking about this idea, and just for what it's worth, we actually debated whether or not to include this in the interview today at all, but we're including it because different places have different laws. Before you participate in any activism along these lines, please look into the laws of your land and proceed accordingly. Now, say that a little bit tongue-in-cheek because, of course, this whole concept, this whole topic of cannabis is a legal, I was going to say legal gray area, but in many respects it's actually completely outlawed, and many of you are perhaps already breaking those laws just by having a toke from time to time. But what I'm saying from a legal perspective...
In some countries, just talking about it is breaking the law.
So if you're in one of those countries, stop listening to this recording and go away. No, I'm just joking, actually. But the point of the matter is this, but
download it and play it later.
We're not encouraging you to break the law. So we accept no legal responsibility for your actions. If you choose to do this as an activist activity, please look into your laws to see whether or not you would be in any trouble doing so. And if you choose to proceed despite it being illegal for you, well, you're on your own on that respect. We presume that you're an adult, sound body and mind, so we take no responsibility of your actions. Just have to make that clear, folks. I apologize for even having to say this. Honestly, I think this is ridiculous that I even would have to say this, but I'm sure many of you understand that this needs to be said from a legal liability perspective to cover both of our butts here, so and then the company and the World Summit, so they can continue to provide this type of content for you for years to come. Anyways.
Or at least as long as we need to keep fighting this fight.
Yeah, well, that's exactly the point. My intention with the summit, as a founder for the summit, is to keep doing this to the best of my ability and the company's ability, as long as this is even a relevant subject. Eventually, once this is all deschedulized or repealed and legalized, let's face it, this will be not important information anymore, and hopefully this will become common sense, common knowledge. People will know what to do with cannabis, and it'll be.
And then our websites will simply be absorbed by garden centers. Now think about that for a minute. All of the grow information that has been posted out there and that has been considered a criminal thing, wouldn't it would be so much easier if you could just go to any garden center and say, "Oh, I want a book on that," and they say, "Oh, okay, well here you go."
Yeah, folks, buy people's books who write about cannabis. Support people who actually are stepping out on a limb, taking a leap of faith, going into shark-infested waters, trying to bring you this information. Because let's face it. These are the brave warriors in this war on drugs. The people who are actually the activists who are speaking out, bringing forth this information. Express your gratitude to them, and the best way to express your gratitude to them is, buy their products or support them in whatever way financially that you can, because they take a lot of financial hits, and they,
Yeah, a good example
also personal
would be Daniel Bowen's book. On the 12-1 lighting system. They used to call it gas lighting. I think they called it gas lighting many years ago. But now they're just calling it the 12-1 system because, growing cannabis is completely different than growing plants.
Okay.
So, another good, another mandatory resource as far as I'm concerned is Jack Hare's book, The Emperor Wears No Clothes.
And you know what? So I'm not talking about myself here or anybody out there. They need your support. Thank them for all the work that they're doing. Eventually, like ElectroPig just said, the garden centers will usurp this information and it'll become readily available to everybody. But they're not doing that yet. It's
in the meantime, that's what we got to do. Yep.
Yeah. In the meantime, that's what we got to do. Now, speaking of projects, support and stuff like that, I know you have coins. Can you talk about those beautiful copper? I like how you put them, the pot coppers.
Yeah, actually, that was. The term was coined, if you'll pardon the pun, by the Mint. They used to be available through the AOCS Mint, the American Open Currency Standard. They've since shut down their retail marketing division, so they're a lot more difficult to get a hold of. You can't get them directly from the Mint anymore. Which will raise the cost a bit. But basically, they're nice little copper coins, 1 ounce. On the back it says barter trade token, which is another subject that people are probably going to have to think about with, when you take the current.
And how do you spell token, by the way?
It's spelled Tokin. And on the front, it's got a big cannabis leaf and the words "Live Free or Die," which really, when you break things down to its absolute base, that's a complete list of options.
Okay, interesting point.
So, but I just got those because I wanted more people to understand the idea of barter and trade, the idea of having something with actual physical intrinsic value, which is the copper, and as well as the idea of freedom. And it has a big pot leaf on it, so a lot of people think it's cool. So that's actually the main reason most people get it. So I call it stealth education. They'll get the extra information eventually, even though they'll probably just get it just because it's got a leaf on the front.
It is appealing in that respect.
Yeah, and they just they have a nice little. It's nice when you drop one on the counter.
Well, here we are again. Anyways,
you can insert like commercials and shit in there.
Yeah, we're taking a break for a commercial break here.
Yes, but, we have to talk about our boner pills, possible side effects, death, and anal leakage.
Oh, you know what? Actually, that's hilarious. But if you actually, I've watched a number of times those commercials on TV, and of course they have to list the side effects. And I listened to some of those commercials, and I'm thinking, my God! After listening to that commercial, who in their right mind would go to their doctor to talk about these pills? Like seriously?
Yes, absolutely. And they always end those stupid commercials with, "Ask your doctor if blah 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 is right for you." I mean, come on! If the doctor, if the doctor didn't specifically suggest it, maybe he doesn't think it's right for you. But it's all about money. Oh well, what you gonna do?
You know what? This, of course, I was normally going to edit this out, but how do you feel if I just left that in and just?
Yeah, that's all right.
Just had to drop the call back. So the last thing you mentioned, of course, you dropped the coin. I heard it on the counter, and geez, I can't remember the words you were going to say. You said actually, has a nice sound when you drop it on the counter. So just
well, that's basically what I've been doing. I've been not saying a word and allowing other people to open the conversation, because when they hear that, they look down, and 9 times out, what the hell is that? And usually when it lands, that's about 9 times out of 10. That's the exact words. What the hell is that? Because they've never seen anything like that. They've never seen anything 1.5 inches across landing on the counter. And the other 10% of the time, if it lands with the leaf up, usually you'll hear, "Oh, cool!" And then the next thing you hear is, "Well, where can I get one of those?" And usually I say, "Well, I just happen to have a few in my pocket." So I'll end up giving them one right then and there.
Trade, barter, or token with them, huh?
Yep. Yep, I've done that. I've done that actually a few times.
So, of course, people, you can actually see on the website one of the pictures of this pot copper coins. And so, can you explain to us how we can get one of our own?
Well, if you wanted one, you can hunt down.
And it's a limited time offer, by the way. You should explain that too.
Yeah, you can probably still find them on eBay. There are people that are selling them for $7.85 as a starting bid, plus shipping. And you know about eBay and how they scam you on shipping. So you can probably get one for as little as $10 or all the way up to $20, depending on how they.
So you can buy for at least $0.01 and $20 shipping, right? Yeah,
that's another nice scam that they have going there. I had them available on the Overgrow the World website for a while there, but it ended up being not profitable to do so, and I just keep seeming to lose money when I send them out one by one. So I don't think I will be making them available there anymore. I figure if I'm going to lose the money on them, I might as well keep them myself.
Well, can I just ask you, because I know we talked before, you have like a few hundred of them still left. Are you willing for, let's just say, a 2-week period around the time of the summit, for a 2-week period after this recording airs or is released to the public or whatever you want to call it, are you willing at that time to make this available, whatever you have left in your possession, to people for that time period, or should they just go straight to eBay or eBay after that 2-week period?
Well, I have a few. If I can get donations that'll offset the costs, then I can probably still make a few, several hundred available. That wouldn't be that big a problem. But I'm not going to send them out at a loss. That's the thing. If I'm bringing in $5 and I have to pay the PayPal fees, and I have to pay for the postage, and I have to pay for the envelopes, then I end up losing money. So I wouldn't want to do it that way.
So, folks, it's not for free, but you know what? It's like we talked before in our previous calls. You're not one of these greedy corporate guys trying to get rich selling these coins either. Can you?
I'm not asking for $100 a piece. I mean, that's crazy. But if you've got an extra tenner that you would like to contribute to the cause, then I'd be more than happy to send one of these out upon request. Just drop me an email and let me know that you wanted one, or you wanted 2, or you wanted 17, or however many you want. And if I've got them, I'll send them out, and everybody will benefit, in theory.
So, ladies and gentlemen listening to this, take advantage of this. He's got these great coins. They make great gifts as well. And I don't know how long he'll be doing this, but let's just say maybe a week or two around the time of the summit, he'll make these available for you. And so please take advantage of this. And also, can you just briefly talk? We're almost done here with this call, but I just want you to just touch upon, the cost. We've talked a little bit about this before amongst ourselves. The costs involved of being an activist, and of course, people are not necessarily going to support you unless they've seen what you've done. Can you just sort of talk about how important it is to actually support people who are doing various different activist projects, not for getting rich purposes, but for doing something good? Can you just touch on that? You mean
just to keep the basic expenses, just to keep things going?
Yeah,
it's like the website. It'd be, it could be $20-25 a month, and that's coming out of these people's pockets. They also have to make sure that they have their internet connection. Well, on average, that's between $35 and $55 for most people. If they've got if they're using DSL, they have to have a phone line, so that's another $35, $40, whatever. It all adds up, and it all adds up every single month. And it would be nice for, to get some support to at least offset the basic costs. We're not talking about, buying office buildings for corporations. We're talking about just, basic subsistence that, these people are actually using to help get the word out, not so that they can, get their flight to Amsterdam so they can have a party. This is completely different things.
Yeah, so these things cost money, folks. So remember, buy their books. Support them. Don't be using the illegal copies you can download off the internet. Of course, I'm sure we've all done that with various different types of content, whether it be music or videos or whatnot. But especially in this case, if you really believe in this cause of the legalization and making cannabis free for all of us to use for whatever purpose we intend to use it for, send a few bucks to one of the activists that you particularly like, or the organizations that you believe is actually doing something good, and don't download illegal copies. Support them by buying the book. It's maybe only $15, $20 or maybe a little bit more, but it's worth it, and that greases the wheels for more of this information to become available to you, and also the legalization process in itself. There's a lot of costs involved to do this, folks. So, we're not asking for money, and of course, on my website, I'm saying, hey, I don't want your money. Please read that link. I'm not asking for your money, but be aware that all these activists need to eat, pay their bills, and of course, their personal bills, but even just their activist activities does rack up additional expenses as well. So,
going to the events that people want to see you at, it doesn't just come out of the ether. You still
plane tickets don't just materialize.
Yeah, you can't buy gas to get there. You can't pay for your insurance to do this stuff. Well, I suppose you could if you've got the support. But if you don't have the support and somebody wants to, well, in my case, I'm closer to Detroit, and everybody wanted me to go to California and Washington and Oregon over the last couple of years, and I just couldn't do it because we're looking at up to $3,000 in fuel. Well, if I don't have $3,000, I can't give it to the oil companies so that I can get to the event that you want to see me at.
Yeah, I don't think the oil companies will support you, considering that you're talking about hemp oil as well, right?
Yeah, because they're not really interested in funding their own demise, because let's face it, the entire petro economy is based on a fraud.
Which is another subject matter.
Yeah, well, we never needed to use gasoline or diesel in the first place. We could have kept using alcohol and various pressed oils just perfectly fine. The diesel engine was not designed for what is now called diesel fuel. It was designed to run on hemp seed oil and flaxseed oil, and basically almost all of the earlier engines were all designed to run on any combustible liquid that was available, and it all had adjustments. It was deliberately separated into diesel and gasoline for the petrochemical market, but nobody really wants to know about that. Or nobody wants you to know about that.
Well, anyways, of course, that's a huge subject. And, of course, earlier in the call we said that cannabis in and itself is just really a drop in a humongous bucket of other topics that there's injustices around.
It's amazing how far this plant actually could reach if it was allowed back into the public hands.
Oh, I don't even know where to begin on that. There's just so many angles of how you can approach that comment.
Yeah.
Of course, it's been said, just to perhaps to summarize that, it's been said, and this is not just a saying, this is absolutely an undisputable fact. Hemp is the most useful plant on the planet. There is no other plant on the planet that we are aware of that has anywhere near the amount of benefits to humanity and the planet, environmentally speaking, as cannabis does. Of course, we understand it's medicine. It's extremely potent medicine. It's wonderful medicine, and it outperforms many other things that the doctors have under their...
Here's another way to look at it that most people haven't thought of. Everybody knows that at the turn of the century, the century before last...
Okay, so 100 years or so ago.
Yeah. That it was used in over 35,000 products. From medicine, rope, blah, 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 blah. The list was, well, it wasn't endless, but they had figured out at least 35,000 uses for it. Now, when you think about the last century's worth of advances in farming technology, in distribution, in processing, in chemical science, and you add all of that into it, we're talking about 1 million potential products here. And that's probably a very, very low-ball estimate. Because every single person who's listening to this right now can look around and find something that's made of plastic.
Just perhaps
if they have
to bring
paint, it's probably had some sort of an oil base to it. So everyone can look in every direction and find something that could have been made with hemp products.
What kind of pants are you wearing?
Unfortunately, a pair of jeans.
Well, actually, no, fortunately, because that's actually the answer that I was hoping you to give me. I'm actually wearing a pair of jeans right now. And I'd be willing to bet that the majority of the people listening to this recording right now are wearing a pair of canvas jeans. Now,
made of 100% GMO cotton.
That's right. But canvas jeans made out of canvas, of course, originally, canvas was made out of cannabis.
Mm-hmm. And so, of course, canvas is actually a sort of a perversion of the Dutch word for cannabis.
Yeah. So our jeans that we're wearing, made out of cotton, could easily be made. In fact, sort of the original material was canvas, or cannabis, I should say. And so
and they lasted approximately 10 times as long, too.
Yeah, so if you got ripped jeans on right now, you're being ripped off because they shouldn't be ripped.
Yep.
Canvas is much stronger. But, yeah, so, of course, medicinally,
although they wouldn't look as cool.
They wouldn't look as cool.
No, without the fray, man. It's the fray that makes them cool.
True, those ripped knees and stuff like that. But the point of the matter is this, of course, our houses can be built with it. Henry Ford built cars with it, and of course they're even talking. There's this company right now. I can't remember the name of the company right now off the top of my head, but they're building cars out of hemp. You can actually build
cars. The Kestrel.
That's what it's called?
Yeah, Kestrel. I can't remember if that's the name of the company or the car, but it's definitely a name associated with what we were trying to think of remembering.
Well, you know what? Perhaps what I should do is I should look into that company and invite them to talk about their cars for the next summit, because people need to be aware that there's so many purposes. So, of course, we talk industrial, agricultural, medicinal. The list is endless. It truly is endless. It's mind-boggling.
And it could even be expanded more if we had everyone looking at it with open eyes. If we had all our scientists and all our engineers looking at this, all our doctors not being afraid to talk about it or research it, things could change overnight, but we have to keep educating people. We have to keep making sure that more people know what we know instead of hiding what we know, with the people we know are, they're cool. We can talk to them.
Well, I guess it's best summarized to say that the reason why we're not enjoying the benefits of the most useful plant on the planet is due to ignorance and stigma.
Mm-hmm. And that's it in a nutshell right there.
Yeah.
If we eliminate the ignorance, we also eliminate the stigma at the same time.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, once people become educated, I've seen this already a number of times. They started off with the big stigma, but then once they've learned a few things, they become actually advocates themselves, and they become furious.
Yeah.
In fact,
I got to tell you how I actually got started in all of this. There was I go to the coffee shop right next to the local police station, and I heard some dumbass pothead spouting off to his buddy about how you can smoke weed and cure cancer. And at that time, I had listened to all the garbage that I was told my entire life, just like most other people. So I set out to prove that dumbass pothead wrong. And the more I researched into it, I found that I was right. You cannot possibly smoke enough weed to cure cancer. But if you use the oil, if you ingest the oil, you can get enough cannabinoids into your system to, if not cure, at least to mitigate it or to stabilize the condition. So the next time I saw that pothead, I set him straight. And then I explained this is what you can do to actually cure cancer. And this is at the coffee shop right next to the local police station. So I didn't give a damn who was around. And, there's always cops in the place pretty much. So, not a single cop said anything against me. I didn't get any hassle. I've never actually had any problem about that because, even cops, when confronted with reality, they can't just say, well, there's something wrong with that. It's their job to investigate things. So those are the kind of people that need to know this stuff the most, which is actually kind of strange because they're the last people who anyone wants to tell this information to.
That's true, actually. That's true. I have to admit that. No, I
know. I just thought about that myself. I'm like, man, it's no damn wonder. We're not giving this information to our politicians, so it's no wonder the politicians are never changing their mind. We're not giving this information to the police, so it's no wonder that the police are never changing their minds. So we revert to public discussion of one form or another. How do we open the public discussion? And
grow some hemp.
Yep. And when we get people talking about it, that's when we have the opportunity to tell people what we know and to point them to websites and to tell them about books and tell them about authors, tell them about Jack Hare, tell them about Rick Simpson, tell them about Dr. Bob Melamede, tell them about Shauna Banda, tell them about Lindsay McGantz, Rima Lebo. We can raise the fights that John Turmel has been waging against the fraudulent court system for so many years now. We can tell them about the people who've been doing it for decades that get absolutely no support compared to what they do. Like Casper Leach. Look for timeforhemp.com. Listen to this guy. He's interviewed everyone who has ever made any contribution to the cannabis movement. If they've ever made any contribution, they have talked to Casper Leach. They have been recorded. They've been on his show. Casper is one of the most important living resources of cannabis-related information, whether it's medical, whether it's farming, whatever. If you want information, go to Time for Hemp. Talk to him. Listen to what these people say. And once you hear what they have to say, tell other people. Not just, the guy you got that bag from that was really, really good. Find a way to interject into a conversation when you hear somebody saying something stupid.
And folks, you know what? This is not going to be easy, especially if you're just starting out. I'll say for what it's worth that there's a lot of people. It's just amazing how many people's lives are touched by cancer. Okay, you don't have to think 6 degrees of separation. There's actually people that personally who are touched by cancer, either themselves or a close family or friend to them, and it's just amazing. And other illnesses.
There was one very recent. I think I told you about a buddy of mine, Silvano. He was a year older than me, and he's died of cancer.
Yes.
And this is after I had learned all this stuff, and I could have told him about it, but he didn't want people to worry, so he never told anybody he had cancer, and he ended up dying. Well, I don't know if I could have cured him, or not if I could have cured him, but if he could have been cured with using the oil. But it would have been nice to have known and to have passed on that information. But at the same time, you have to consider that if people aren't passing this information and people are dying just because they don't have this information, that is a bigger problem that needs to be addressed. A good example of a perfect example of that. My doctor's wife. He died a few years ago, and she died a couple of years ago now of cancer. She had been involved. She was the wife of a general practitioner. She worked in this office for 50, 60 years. And she had seen the effects of chemotherapy for decades. She had seen the effects of radiation for decades. She had seen the effects of cancer for decades. And she opted not to tell anybody because everyone would tell her, take this chemotherapy, take these nice toxic chemicals to make you better. Mm-hmm. Take this radiation. Doesn't matter if you glow in the dark. You'll live longer. It's healthy for you, except for the fact that it causes cancer. And she knew this, so she opted to just stay quiet, not take any care, no chemotherapy, no radiation, keep her hair, and live longer. And that's what she did. But at the same time, I knew everything that I know now. I knew about Rick. I knew what Jack Hare had been trying to do. I knew about Dr. Melamede. I could have, the first thing I would have done is would have said, okay, well, you got a 2-car garage, let's cut this sucker down and let's put a couple of plants in here.
Yeah.
Because,
well, so that's the other issue is that, of course, if myself, my wife, my kids, or anybody in my immediate family were to get diagnosed with cancer, I wouldn't care less about the laws. I'd be like, of course, being very discreet as I can, I'd be growing a whole plantation of it for making medicine. But that's the other side. So, of course, you tell people about it. However, if they have no access to it, that's just it's another one of the part of a catch-22 situation. Like, I have friends that have actually passed away. I know people who've passed away from cancer, and there's a personal reason why I'm also doing all of this stuff with the summit. And of course, I'm trying to. Rick Simpson is actually, I don't know if you're aware of it already just by looking at the website, but I'm really pushing that information because I think this really needs to become common knowledge. Common knowledge of people, say cancer and Rick Simpson in the same breath. Of common people, not just us hotheads or people who are knowledgeable about cannabis. The average person should have Rick Simpson as an everyday, word in their vocabulary or name that they're aware of. And there's actually a friend of mine. Her husband just died a couple of years ago, and she knows that I'm a cannabis activist, but I actually don't tell her everything that I know because it just breaks my heart to even think that there was medicine all along that could have helped her husband. There are people that I also know who have cancer right now, and I've mentioned this to them, but it's just a crazy situation where you even have to weigh the pros and cons about informing people.
Because they're already suffering from what they didn't know.
Yeah.
And at a certain point, you don't know whether it would even help. When they get to a certain point, like my grandmother, she had basically her mind had drifted away for years and years and years and years, and I could not get anyone to even consider it. And she ended up with Alzheimer's, and she didn't even recognize anybody. Well, she didn't recognize me, that's for sure. So, there's nothing you can do about that.
Yeah.
If people are deliberately ignoring the information, deliberately making sure that they don't tell their own friends, their own family about it, then that's a huge problem that also needs to be overcome. The people's basic fear of having a conversation about something that might be able to help. It doesn't matter whether it's a guarantee or not. They should at least know that there is a possibility that they should be looking into.
But it's actually, believe it or not, it's illegal to even tell people about it. In a sense, let me explain why. Only doctors can prescribe, diagnose, and all that sort of stuff. Now, if you tell a friend that has cancer or some other ailment that that cannabis can help, that, cannabis could actually help with that. Technically speaking, by the way that the laws are written in the United States, Canada, and I'm sure many other countries as well, if you are prescribing, technically even saying to somebody, oh, you should drink a glass of water because you look dehydrated, that's technically a prescription that you can actually go to jail for. Now, it doesn't happen that often, but under the circumstances where, the powers that be are trying to maintain these prohibitions, that is something that people need to be aware that when
raw milk raids are a good example
raw milk.
of that. Raw milk, my God, it hasn't been chemically processed or pasteurized. Oh, you can't have live foods because, we're people and people aren't part of nature anymore. The stupidity behind these things is just absolutely amazing.
One of the things I'm raising awareness of also as a sideline project is the benefits of raw milk, and I've even got raw milk starter to help people with that. But
I'm always passing information from Mike Adams, naturalnews.com. It's a very interesting site that more people should look into. He's also not afraid to discuss the benefits of cannabis either. So, well worth checking into.
You know
He's not a cannabis activist. He's just someone who wants people to learn more about what's going on in the world and why things are the way they are. So you got to support the guy like that.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, ElectroPig, you know what? This has been an absolutely fantastic discussion with you. I just want to wrap it up with one more thing here about your website. We talked a little bit earlier before this call actually got started about the website. I'm going to provide the links that people can go to visit your website. However, you've also given me the permission to make a copy of your website, which I will make a copy of and put it on a subdirectory of the Cannabis World Summit so that there's at least a copy should your website go down. Would you like to tell people about your website, what else they can find over there? Anything that you'd like to direct their attention to before we wrap up this call?
I guess the two things that they should look for, the actual website itself, overgrow.ning.com. It's overgrow, one word, .ning.com. You should look for what is Overgrow the World about, and the fallacy of the legalize and tax cannabis initiatives. And that'll pretty much give them a good idea of what I've been trying to get out there for the last 5, 6, 7 years. And hopefully it'll stick in somebody else's mind. So it'll go a little bit further that way.
Yeah, well, we've talked a lot about actually touching upon the points of those articles that you just mentioned. So if you're interested in, of course, finding out more about the concepts of descheduling, repealing, and done, as we discussed during this call, that's the fallacy. Can you say the title of that page again, the fallacy of?
The fallacy of the legalize and tax cannabis initiatives. It'll probably be the first link that you find on Google.
Yes, and then the other page that you're talking about, that's where we were discussing about the groups that are fighting amongst themselves, about the hemp, the medicinal users, the recreational, and the other groups as well.
I scribbled that down in the What is Overgrow the World About?
Right. And there's other resources there as well, so of course check that website out, and ElectroPig, fabulous name. Say your Von, what was it, Von?
ElectroPig Von Fokkengruuven.
I love it when you say that.
It just has more emphasis to it than hi, I'm Todd, and I would like to talk to you about the benefits of cannabis. It's just it just sounds different. It's a better starter, and I've been using it for 20 odd years on before there even was an internet. So it's actually it's been with me for a while. And the best part about it is when somebody recognizes me on the street, they go, "Hey, pig!" And whenever there's a cop around, it's absolutely priceless to see their expression change. There's just no way, because they're ready to go after whoever said that, and then I go, "Hey, how's it going?" And they're like, "Huh?" It's not quite the same as making somebody laugh just after they came out of surgery, but the expression changes pretty quick.
Well, I have to say, for what it's worth, it's been a delightful pleasure talking to you. Of course, for everybody listening, I've had the pleasure of speaking with ElectroPig a couple of times before this call, and the first time actually I spoke with you, I wasn't sure what I was stepping into because you had that persona.
I tend to look at things differently than most people do. So it's not that much of a surprise, but the more you discuss anything, the more you understand where they're coming from. That's what I find. People are afraid to talk about just about everything, and the problem with that is when you try to explain your own thinking, you have to try to relate it into terms that the person you're talking to will understand. So as you try to reformulate your thoughts so that they can get what you mean, it actually reinforces it in your own mind. It helps you to find other ways to solidify the concept in your own mind. And, the more you talk about things, the better it is, not just for the people who are presented with this information the first time, but the better it is for you, because as you try to relate it to more apparently disparate situations, the more you understand it yourself. So it's not just about spreading the word, it's about making sure that you understand what is in your mind already.
Yeah, it refines those thoughts, but I also like the concept by the author Richard Bach in the book Illusions. He said, you teach best that which you most need to learn, and I think there's a part of that as well, that we share the information that's important for us to really understand as well, for a number of reasons. But anyways, perhaps that might not have been the most relevant concept. I apologize, but I'll retract that a bit. It seemed relevant before I spoke. Anyhow.
It's a philosophical idea.
Yes.
And everybody knows that potheads aren't they're not smart, man. We can't talk about that stuff, man, because we don't like think deep and stuff,
Well, for what it's worth, actually, I have to say that before I, really started exploring the cannabis activism stuff, of course, I'm sure everybody has the pot stereotype, but especially myself, because I've had the pleasure of speaking to intelligent people such as yourself and other people that I've been talking to with regards to the summit. There's a lot of very smart potheads, and this whole stereotype of a pothead being an idiot, I really don't see the truth of that. I'm sure there are people who can be pointed to as examples of the stereotype, but
I know a few, yeah. We all know a few.
We all, of course, but nonetheless, of course, there's a lot of high-end professionals who consume cannabis for whatever reason they choose to. I'm not even qualify that medicinally or recreationally, whatever reason. And there's a lot of respectable people who are in their own private homes, hiding away. They're secretive. Ever since I started openly speaking to people about the fact that I actually been using cannabis medicinally and other things along those lines, it's surprising to me how many people that I would never have thought have used cannabis or would be, extremely opposed to it, how open-minded that they are, and in fact they start openly sharing their stories as well, and it's amazing.
And it all goes back to opening a dialogue.
Yeah.
And it's the one thing that I've, when I was telling you about dropping these little coins on the countertop, when someone else opens the conversation, they're already more open to whatever they will learn, and that's absolutely invaluable. If you get other people to start the conversation.
So you just used the drop the coin. I think I just got what you've been saying all along through this conversation. So you just drop the coin on the counter. People will notice it because, of course, it's a sound of a coin dropping.
Mm-hmm. Yep.
And then it gives you the opportunity to open.
You don't have to say a word. If you're all paranoid about opening a discussion, there you go. That's your opening. You didn't say a word. They opened the conversation.
Well, that is brilliant. You know what? That really is brilliant. You know, folks, get yourself one of these pot copper coins immediately and start conversing with people.
And you thought I was just pretty. I got me one of them there brain boxes. Does stuff on its own. Dag nabbit, eh?
You cracked me up, man. You cracked me up. Anyways, I want to thank you so very much for, taking the time to speak with me, but of course you're speaking to all the people who are listening to this, and I hope that people enjoy your humor, and you know what? You're definitely not one of those potheads. You are so intelligent. I've been impressed by a number of the things that you've said in this call and our previous conversations, and I really hope that people take away something from this conversation, and perhaps at the very least they can take a coin, drop it on the table, and start spreading the word. So thanks a lot, ElectroPig. What's that?
I said bit by bit. Well,
bit by
make
bit.
inroads as we can.
Absolutely. I'd like to thank you once again, and thank you very much for participating.
Oh, that was my pleasure. Anything you can do, if you don't do it, it's not going to do anything. But if you at least make the attempt, it might get somewhere. It at least increases the potential. So I'm all for it.
Well, thank you.